Good afternoon, everybody. This is meteorologist Gabriel Crap here. I'm back with another video. Now, today we're going to be going over why I think this November is going to be bipolar. When I mean the word bipolar, I'll start with you a little definition to start off the evening for you. Warm in the beginning in the east, and in the west, cold. And then we'll flip that pattern for the second half of the month, and it'll become a much more zonal, much more trough-sided system. So what you're taking a look at here is the average precipitation and intensity. So you see snow, sleet, freezing rain, and rain. And you can see that this is right now about 12Z November 2nd, which is about, I'd say that was 6 a.m. this morning. So I'm just going to move this forward to forecast hour 12:00Z Thursday, November 3rd. That'll be tonight at around 7 or 8 p.m. Now, what's interesting to note is these lines represent isobars. Blue, the 540. So if you see the very first blue line right on top of the red line, that's your freezing 32-degree line. Anything warmer than that is warmer, and anything below that is cooler. So as of now, we see a storm in the west producing a lot of snow and perhaps some coastal rain, some rain over Florida, and dry with a very large dome of high pressure, 1031 Arctic high right over the northeast. I'm going to move this forward 4 frames. This is tomorrow evening around the same time. It's now snowing in Denver. It snowed in Salt Lake City overnight a little bit throughout the day. This is about, late tomorrow evening. Low in the rain off the coast of North Carolina, rain along the Yucatan Peninsula, and that rain continues to spread further east. Once you get to, let's say, I don't know, this is like late Friday afternoon. That 540 line is now in the United States, north central United States. Another storm is moving across the northwestern United States, and there's starting to be some freezing, much colder temperatures across the northern plains. There's also a very large span of rain extending all from Houston to Minneapolis, and that rain band is only going to further intensify. A low pressure center is 995, and it's forming in the middle of that storm, and it's only going to pull in that colder air and start making that trough negatively tilted, which will mean that snow will form on the back end, as you can see here, just north of the Minneapolis area. It may not be the 540 line, but again, it only needs to be 37 degrees for sure to happen. And you can also see some severe storms down in the southeast, in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. But the main event is this large storm with snow and rain stretching across the upper Midwest, Ontario, Quebec, and all the way over to the Hudson Bay. That gets out of the way, and the northeast stays clear. A second storm moves into the northwest, much more potent this time, in large swaths of snow extending through Alberta, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. That moves up through the upper Midwest and gives some rain and beneficial snow. Meanwhile, while that is happening, there is going to be I suppose you could say, subtropical system trying to develop off Florida. That just kind of spins around for a few days, gives coastal locations some beneficial rain, then moves up the coast and gives northeast rain. Now, this is around the 12th of November, and this is where I think the pattern will begin to flip because, as you can see, previously it's been warm in the northeast. The 540 line hasn't even touched northeast. Now, as we move towards the 11th, that Arctic intrusion, all those blue isobar lines with the snow on the northwest side of it, mean that cold air is finally making its way into the northeast. The 540 line crosses Massachusetts and goes south of it. It stays with the northeast. It tries to get another little warm up, but another storm moves through with another disturbance and more cold air, and it just stays hot out west. And another storm starts to move into the northeast, and the pattern persists. So you may be wondering, well, what exactly does this look like in terms of temperature? Well, I can show you a map that will show you the temperature, how far from your normal in degrees Celsius your temperature will be. And this is very important that we look at this because this is your 2 meter temperature anomaly map. So anywhere, in the whites, you're about average, and then reds is above normal temperatures, and, your blues, purples, and eventually whites are the below normal temperatures. So this is now as when I'm recording this video, and this is about, again, around 8 p.m. on Wednesday evening. You can see the most above normal temperatures are located across the upper Midwest and the Great Plains states, with, moderately light to moderate above normal temperatures in the southeast, extending all the way up the eastern seaboard, with maybe the exception of Maine and northern New England, which is just about average. You can see a deep trough in the west, where temperatures are significantly below normal, on the order of, 6, 8, 10 degrees Celsius below normal. And if I push this further east, that ridge continues to intensify in the east. And then we get into a more zonal pattern where it's kind of a little bit messier out west, but overall cooler in the west, warmer in the east. Now, this is the 5th of November. I'm going to move this forward a little bit. We continue that pattern where it's colder in the west, especially the northwest, so in the southwest too, parts of Mexico, Baja California, and in the upper plains. It remains very warm and very dry as well in the northeast. It's also a bit wetter in the southeast, which is why Florida and the coastal Carolina areas a little bit less departures from normal in terms of their temperature. We move on any further, and that warm air starts to kind of retreat further south. Notice those blues popping up for parts of the upper Midwest, and that's signifying a change in the pattern. The warm air is retreating further south. Here we have a frame. So this is about the 8th of November. This is early morning. We sort of have two main upper air patterns in the United States at this point. One for the Northwest, which is far, far below normal temperatures. Notice those white colors in northern Washington and Montana, 20 degrees Celsius below normal. That's nearly 45 Fahrenheit below normal. On the other flip side, we have 16 degrees above normal for much of the southeast, south central, and even the Great Plains up to the upper Midwest. That's, 25, 30 degrees above normal. So you're going to definitely feel that contrast. The Northeast is also experiencing kind of a mixed bag, roughly average between plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius. So effectively an average temperature day. The cold continues to take a little bit advantage of the Northeast at that point. It's still very, very, very cold out west, nearly 30 degrees below normal, 60 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for parts of Montana, pretty much the entire, anywhere west of the Rockies. It's very, very hot, torchy in the plains, Midwest, Southeast. A little bit of cool pocket of air in the Northeast that's likely to have a storm, and a little bit of pocket of cooler air in the Southeast as well. The cold air also starts to take a little bit more hold into the northeast United States as we get towards the 8th and 9th of the month, but it still remains incredibly warm across the Midwest, especially the upper Midwest and the Gulf states. The cold out west continues. Similar stories are make our way towards the 11th of November. Now, around the 11th of November, you see those warmer temperatures starting to make their way back into the northwest around the 12th, and a large dome of colder air moving into the eastern United States, more the central at this point. This massive cold air is not quite as cold as the air mass that was in the northwest previously, but it's still fairly potent and can deliver a good blow. You also see it starting to warm up a little bit in the west. It's kind of a bit messed up in the west. I think the model's a little bit confused about really what's it like in the west. As we move further on, you see significant cold in the east, a little bit of colder in the north and the northwest, but definitely a warm up in the south and southwest. We keep going, and we see a little bit of resumal of a warmer pattern for the east, and definitely a bit more cold out west, the Rockies, the plains, upper Midwest, Northwest, California holding on to that warmth, the Southeast holding on to that warmth. New England is kind of a mixed bag, especially coastal locations, and then sort of the Midwest is kind of also a mixed bag. Take this out even further towards hour 372, or 354, sorry, 372. This is as far as this model goes, 384 hours, or about, 2 weeks, 16 days. And this is about Friday, November 18th in the early morning hours of the Northeast. There is cold in the Northeast, a little bit of cold in North Central and along the Southeast coast, but overall, the western two-thirds of the nation, southwestern two-thirds, is looking warm. And what's important to take with this is that it's important to take this with a grain of salt because what we're not looking at is exact temperatures here. We're just looking about on average how far away from your normal this is going to be. Now, of course, you're all trying to wonder, well, what exactly does this mean for our temperatures? I can tell you that right now. So this is kind of, I guess, in your greens, it's sort of 32 to 60, and then 60, 70, 80, to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll see the numbers here on the Northeast. You can clearly see that ridge of very, very far above normal temperatures in the east and below normal temperatures in the west. A lot of freezing in the west, not much in the east. This is around Thursday, November 3rd. It remains very warm in the east with temperature, 70, 65, 70, 80, all along up and down the eastern seaboard. A little bit cooler in the upper Midwest by this point. Perhaps some touches of frost and freeze in Minnesota and Wisconsin, but again, very, very cold out west. Similar story where the warmth really takes a hold on the eastern seaboard, the southeast, but it remains very cold, especially in the northwest, northern plains. And then the cold continues to The same pattern. It's a little bit cooler here in the Northeast as we get towards the 8th, ninth of the month. The warmth starts to retreat further south. Notice these temperatures, however. These purples popping up are negative 17 degrees. That's negative 17 Fahrenheit in parts of Minnesota, Montana, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, and even as far south as, let's say, northern Utah's 0 Fahrenheit, parts of Yellowstone, 9 degrees, 5 degrees I'm seeing there in eastern Idaho, and even the coastal areas that normally experience moderation due to their coastal effect are starting to see some freezes at that point. Widespread freezes in the interior Northeast, which continue. Then we get a slight warm up in the Northeast around the 11th, 12th of the month. And then that warm air clears out, and we get significantly colder air moving into the central United States by this point. Now, most of the country right now, at this point in time, according to this model, would be in a relatively cold pattern. I think the west starting to warm up a little bit, especially along the coast. I think the south is starting to warm up. I think this northeast is definitely much cooler because these are the night temperatures. So, these night temperatures are what, 35, 40 degrees. You can see that widespread frosts and freezes taking effect. Northern third of the country with a bit of warmth in the southwest. Another trough starts to move into the western half of the United States, still remaining cool in the northeast. And then, the model gets a little bit confused as you get further out, but you get the story. And then we kind of get more significant freezes in the east as you get later on, 378, 384 hours out, with also some more freezes in the northwest. But the southwest, south central, and southeastern United States remain warm by that point as well, which is interesting to note because typically you don't get a pattern whereby the ridge is in the center of the country and there is cold on either coast. I also want to point out one other thing, and that the total amount of snow or total amount of precipitation, water equivalent that we're going to be getting. Look at the Northwest, incredibly stormy. The coastal Northwest, the central United States, pretty stormy. The Rockies, pretty stormy. Texas, but not too much precipitation in the Southeast. Much of the plain states, western, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Panhandle, Texas. Not too much in the lower Midwest, Ohio Valley, and a little bit of precipitation, but again, not too much in the Northeast. Significantly more precipitation along the coastal areas of Florida and the Carolinas, potentially up towards south towards Georgia too. More rain. And that's just one model that's showing it. Again, doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I'm just trying to give you a picture. It looks as though a colder and wetter pattern is going to be taking more of a shape across the east, and a warmer and drier pattern could be emerging around the west. This is again still a very deterministic model, and so it's very difficult for us to tell at this point. I'm just going to go by the European model again. This is again the 12th. Notice how that cold blob, very, very cold blob in the northwest, starts to kick out the warm off the east coast, and you start to get those temperatures that are below normal moving into, let's say, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, even West Virginia, portions of Pennsylvania, definitely Michigan, Minnesota by this point, and the warm starts to make a little bit of a return in the Southwest as it has. But prior to that, the model just shows the very, very torchy east. Notice some warmer temperatures in the northwest could be due to, again, some glitching errors, but overall, we're looking at the pattern for a colder northwest, a warmer south and east, which should be switching and clearing out by the time we reach the 12th. And if this model would go out further, I would expect to see that blob of significantly below normal temperatures to move east about 2,000 miles, and that warmth to begin building along the west coast, especially California, Nevada, and Arizona. Well, that's all for me today. Hope you have a wonderful night. Like, subscribe to the video, comment down below if you have any questions, or if you just want a personal forecast, or if you want to thank me. I always appreciate reading your comments, and have a wonderful evening. Until I see you next week. Bye for now.